Welcome to Real Estate for Real Life podcast. I'm Ryan Wilson.
And I'm Courtney Gauchman.
This episode, we are going to be talking about the systems that set you free.
Amazing. Systems and standards, right?
Yes.
So kind of discussing a little bit of both because ultimately as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you need to create systems and you need to have standards in place in order to be able to gain back time.
Right. It's not always the most exciting topic to discuss, but it's something that is like so essential in every business. And this is for super, super small companies, or it could be for massive, multinational companies. Like it applies to everyone, and you need systems in place because you want, that's really what kind of unlocks, so many of these different things. Allows you to minimize mistakes and make things repeatable. So we're going to be talking about standards quite a bit, and really what these systems are just standards that you can repeat essentially.
Exactly. So with standards, right,
Mhm.
and with systems, it allows for less decision fatigue.
Oh yeah.
And that's a huge thing right now, especially in a business where you're client facing. The amount of decisions that you're making on a regular basis are immense. You are constantly helping and guiding your clients and leading them into what type of decisions need to be made. So the more you can create things that alleviate that extra thought, that extra moment of pause that you have to kind of reinvent the wheel, the more that you're going to actually succeed and free up more time, right?
Right.
So for me, being in operations, this is actually something that I could talk about all day. I do love the systems behind all of our standards.
Right.
But why don't we get into the best way to describe this, right? Is to actually give real examples. Why don't we get into the standards that Wilson Group has? Why we use these standards, what they're for, right? In terms of how we hold people accountable, how we hire according to these, and then also if we were to get to the point where you had to terminate, how you utilize them for that as well. And then with each one of our standards, we'll also discuss what the systems are. Just one, we'll give you one example. We're not going to bore you to death with this, trust me. But what one of the systems is that we have in place that actually helps us hold that standard, right? And be able to achieve that standard and ultimately exceed that standard.
Right. Right. And when we're talking systems, a lot of people say, oh, I need to implement systems in my business, or I need someone to create the systems. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in growth mode in order to put systems in place. You could be someone who's not wanting to grow but wants to just make a slightly more efficient company and add a couple systems to help you out there. And especially with us being in the client facing business, ultimately it leads to a better customer experience as well. Because a system is not, the salesperson remembering to do something. A system is something specific that's in place to give a better experience and make sure that nothing slips through cracks. So we'll go through a few of our things that we do, that we have 77 company standards, and we'll go through a few of them. Oftentimes they're very, very simple, but we need to make sure we're executing on them to essentially hold yourself accountable as well. It's not a goal. A goal is kind of a visionary thing that you create. A standard is something that you need to execute on, and essentially it's the baseline. So by creating these standards, you can then look at your standards and say, all right, I'm going to create my goals around them. So like, for instance, one of our standards is we have a sales meeting every week, every Tuesday. It is required that you go to that sales meeting, and we're going to put on the board what all your numbers are. And it's not just your sales numbers. We're going to track everything. So we're going to be tracking, various other things, conversations and referrals, things that we're going to get into. But that's a high level of accountability, and it's required that you be there to, take a look at that standard and make sure you're hitting your numbers and so on.
Exactly. So to go along with that, it is a requirement that you go to the sales meeting. That is part of what's going to make you better, right? We feel very, very confident that what sets a real estate team apart versus a solo agent is the accountability piece. However, for us, it's you are still an independent contractor. So I think that this actually holds up in a lot of different businesses. This is an important thing to have in place. These weekly meetings where you actually assess where people are at and how you're measuring it, right? So you're actually giving some sort of a measurement tool that shows like, kind of where you fall in line. So for us, the systems behind this is we track all of the things that we hold people accountable to. So we track weekly conversations, we track referrals, we track how many appointments you've had, how many clients have signed with you, and then how many people you put under contract and how many are closed. So for the weekly meeting, the systems that go with that, They're kind of endless. There's quite a few of them. But ultimately, that's the stuff that triggers our operations team to be able to then do the work. One thing that I want to back up on, though, and say is you had said something along the lines, Ryan, of some people say, "Oh, I need someone to make these systems for me," right? To create these systems for me. And I think that's where people get held up on this is, especially in our industry, if you're a solo producer, you're a top real estate agent and you move really quickly and just are super efficient and do a phenomenal job, a lot of times you feel like creating systems is something that's going to slow you down and prevent you from being able to achieve more. But ultimately, all you're really doing is you're actually just writing down and documenting the stuff that you do daily, anyways. Because the goal here is when you document it and you have this written down, that is your actual system.
Specific too, and
It
it's
is,
got to be
yeah.
measurable.
But what that allows for is when you're super busy or when life gets a little difficult, you have certain speed bumps that come along, you are still consistent with giving the same level of service to everyone, right? It's not just you knock it out of the park on one client and then the next client suffers. It is about writing it down and then following that so that way you give an exceptional level of customer service over and over and over again. It's repeatable, which is something you mentioned at the beginning. So you don't need anyone else to do that for you. And now with AI, you can have this written out, your system written out with so many quick tools that could do this in a moment's notice, right? So leverage that stuff. People talk constantly about using AI in your business. This is one of the easiest areas to do that. We wrote our systems before AI existed. How many countless hours have we spent creating our processes, writing them out, typing every single detail? It's been hundreds and hundreds of hours and a lot of, trial and error too to refine them. But now you have AI.
Right.
Leverage that.
Leverage it. And as business changes, as technology changes, those systems are going to be improved and tweaked. You might remove something that was old school and add something then that's more efficient. Or there's a mistake that happens, and you say, okay, what's something we can implement so that mistake doesn't happen again? It's constantly tweaking your systems. They're never going to be perfect, but they need to be something that's very, very specific so you can follow it. The other thing, another one of our standards is connecting with our clients on a regular basis. That's not just, before they close and before you, kind of get that check, so to speak. It's afterwards as well. And it's not just connecting with them, it's actually adding value. So, for instance, a couple days ago, we proactively sent out an email seeing if people needed their settlement statements because we know tax season is going to be coming up and we know they're going to need those things. So, proactively getting ahead of things to add value. We are entrusted to represent these people when they're buying or selling the usually the biggest asset in their entire life. And there's a lot that goes into that actual product, that house, that condo, whatever the case may be. And if we can help and add value and help them maintain that, well, that's great. We're doing what we should do, adding value to our customers because I know it's cliche to say, but any sales organization is going to say they want a client for life. But how do you actually get that? If you actually want to earn that client for life, you need to continue to add value. So that's one thing that's required at our company is you actually need to stay in touch with these people and continue to add value. So when the time comes, if they are ready or they have a friend or a coworker or family member, we're the first people they think about. But it's not just because we did a good job on their transactions, because we continue to add value throughout the entire uh, life of the relationship.
Exactly. So, like you mentioned, the second standard that we have for our team is that you need to keep in touch with past clients a certain number of times per year. And that when we have systems in place, it's ultimately surrounding what are you doing to add value, right? Are you connecting them with an estate attorney? Are you connecting them with a handyman? How are you helping them, like you said, maintain their largest asset? How are you helping them maintain the value of their home? And how are you connecting them with people that are going to add value to their life, right? Obviously, sometimes relationships are naturally built with your clients and you end up becoming actual friends and that kind of thing. But then there are other people where it's like they're living their lives, things are busy. You don't need to be best friends with everybody. However, we do always want to be someone who helps and who is always there to assist them with anything home related or anything even just neighborhood related too, right? So we have a lot of different systems in place. And again, we wanted to give one example for every one of our standards. There are a lot. But one thing we do is just don't rely on your memory. if you start to build your business and your business is growing at a rapid pace, you're going to have hundreds of past clients every single year. You can't just remember to reach out to them. You have to have something that's going to trigger you, whether it's their home anniversary, which is a huge one for us, because that's special. That was that milestone that they had and experienced with our team. So that's one of the things that we have a system in place where it triggers us to remind us about their home anniversary and to actually give them a congratulations, send them a gift, and acknowledge such a special occasion, right? And then from there, we also have a couple of other touch points that sprinkle in throughout the rest of the year that just remind us to say, hey, how are you doing? How's life in the new house? Tell me a little bit more about what's happening in your world. And those are the things that you just can't rely on memory, right? It would be crazy for anyone in business to just rely on remembering people.
Right.
You have so many other things going on in the world. So that's one of the systems we put in place to make sure that we just don't have anyone slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Everyone matters.
And we focus in every business is run a little differently. There's some companies out there and they require a certain number of cold calls. That's fine too. You can run a very successful business doing that. Our business is more based on relationships. So we want to nurture those relationships that we currently have. And therefore, they're not going to be getting generic emails from us. Not to say that doesn't work with some businesses, but no, we don't want to send that generic email. We want that agent, that business owner of their own business to be reminded, hey, listen, it's been a year, or it's been 3 months, or whatever the case may be. Reach out something, personal and add value in that situation. It kind of leads to our next uh, standard, which is we're not a company that allows people, if you're an agent, to sit behind the computer and only build your business that way, right? So we require you to get face to face with people, get belly to belly with people, as we call it, and develop the relationship that way, because there's so much more that can be, accomplished if you are meeting that person in person. Yes, Zoom's great. Obviously, we've all adapted that due to COVID, but we still require, and this is just our company standard. This is not something that, might be right for everyone, but we require people to get face to face with people, and you need to be able to meet with your clients and past clients, multiple times throughout the year. So that's another one that's really important to us.
Exactly. So, with a standard, we obviously have to track it. So, a huge piece that we have in place is every single week, we are accounting for how many in person meetings did you have. And then there needs to be a follow up plan in place. So, that would go into our database and then they would be put on a follow up plan. You mentioned something along the lines of we don't just send out generic emails, right? So, I wanted to just touch on that because even with these in person meetings and putting them on a follow up plan, we are strictly a quality over quantity company, right? And again, this is for our business. And this is where whoever's listening out there, if you need quantity, if you are a business that's more of, like you think coffee shop, right? Like you have a lower price point and quantity is everything for you. For us, it's very different. Our price point is different. Our sales um, cycle is different, right? So for us, it is all about quality over quantity at all times. And that's where our touch points are quality. They are actual real touch points. They are not created templates. They are not automatically generated and sent out. So all of these systems actually have to do with just triggering our team to then do the work themselves, right? We use systems and efficiencies and AI and templates for so many other aspects when it comes to paperwork and documents and things that are simple that are just explained over and over and over again. But when it comes to the human touch and actually building these relationships, one of the systems that we do have in place is a reminder to just reach out and put some thought and some actual intention behind what you're sending people so you can deepen that relationship. So that is part of our company standard as well too. So like
Right.
you said, I think we're on our third one now. It's those in-person meetings. But all three of them, you can kind of see the theme. It is about still having that deeper connection with human beings and making sure that you're actually getting out from behind a computer screen and meeting more people, right?
Right.
And connecting.
And as you said, like it is all about the number of human beings, frankly, right? We are in a business that is a numbers game. So part of that, another one of our standards is you have to add to the database because I know there's the saying is if you're not growing, you're dying. And there's a little bit of truth to that because if you're not growing your database and meeting new people regularly, yes, you could have a 90%, rate of return as far as, past clients and whatnot, but you still need to be adding to the database to continue to grow your business. So it's something we track because we all meet people on a regular basis. We're all having good conversations with people, whether it be at a networking event or whether it be a holiday party, whatever the case may be, you're meeting people. Well, now it's not just about work, but if it makes sense, be intentional about that and follow up with that person. Most people, they're not thinking business when they're meeting people, but if you are thinking business and you think that there's an opportunity for you to add value in that person's life, then great. Yeah, they should be part of your database and they should go in there and they should know what you do. So that's something else. You need to add at least one person a week. And again, this is a baseline. There's people out there, if they're starting their career, they might need to add one a day, whatever the case may be. But baseline is we want to be adding at least 52 people a year to the database. Again, quality over quantity.
We absolutely do. And when it comes down to it, the systems around our database are endless. We do a lot of database management on purpose because for us it's we're not trying to send blanket messages to this entire book of business that we have. We're trying to send very specific messaging based on who we're trying to talk to, right? In any given moment. Also based on the reality of when you're reaching out to people, right? Um, our team, when you're selling real estate, you're at showings, you're at inspections, you're at open houses. There's so much being on the road. You're not always sitting at your computer. So for us, the systems that surround adding those contacts are simplicity, right? We want to make it super easy for them to be able to add the new contact to their database so you don't forget, right? Because it's how many times do we meet someone, you write their phone number down on a piece of paper, you add it to your cell phone, but you forget immediately, like to follow up with them and to actually do the work. For this, it's just as quick and easy as adding it to your cell phone. You add their contact to your database, and then you just put them on a quick task to remind yourself to reach back out to them and follow back up with whatever it was that you guys were talking about, right? So that way there's that instantaneous connection because ultimately, again, it is quantity over quality. You could go to an event and scoop up hundreds of phone numbers, right, from a list that of a bunch of people that attended and send them a bunch of spam emails, right? But what are the chances of that really truly converting? And again, depending on your business, some people that's exactly what they need. They need to just pump out a ton of emails and the conversion rate is going to be the conversion rate. For us, it's we are in a very sophisticated market. We have very educated clients. Just because we send them a ton of generic emails does not mean that they want to go and buy $1 million home with us,
Right.
right? So for us, it's like, no, like there had to have been a connection. You have to follow up with them right away. You have to have a reminder. So that way, whatever happens the rest of your day, however many curveballs are thrown your way, you do not forget that it's like you just met someone great. You had a good connection, and now you need to actually do the follow up.
Right.
So, like you said, the standard is that you have to meet bare minimum one new person a week, add them to your database. However, the expectation is that you leverage our systems and you make it so easy that you're able to add to the database and follow up with them that you're exceeding that by tenfold, right?
Right.
Because that's the real truth, right? Is you do need to grow. Numbers do, allow for growth. So it is a numbers game. However, it's also like, but are you actually doing the follow up? Are you doing the work?
Right. And
Right.
is it authentic? I say add value, and that's, everyone wants to add value. And we truly believe in that. We're in a sales business, but we're not, I don't think, acting as salespeople necessarily, because no one wants to get sold something, right? So I truly believe, and this is how we've built this entire business of the mentality of givers gain. So if we actually have the authentic ability to help people out, because that's the number one thing, if we can help people out, even if someone comes to us and says, I want to buy a house, great. That's the type of person we work with, or I want to sell this house. What's our next step? It's not just sell them a house, right? It's educate them. Because if we educate them, then they're going to be much more prepared to make that big decision. So we're helping them out. We're adding value by educating them on what the process is, how we can help. And, there's plenty of people that I've talked to that say, hey, I really want to sell my house. I educate them on the investment. And next thing you know, maybe they end up renting. If that's better for them and better for their portfolio, that now they own some real estate in there, then great. At the end of the day, it's all about adding value and being able to help people out. And I feel by doing that, by actually being authentic and caring about people, which novel concept, right? Like actually caring about people, which is something we really pride ourselves on. You're going to get referrals. And that's another one of our standards is that you're required to get referrals. So we feel that if you're actually giving that high level of service, if you're actually showing by your actions that you care, you're going to get referrals. So yes, for our team, it's required to get referrals because if someone's not getting referrals, but they're doing a fair amount of business, what does that tell you? People aren't willing to give your name out. Well, that might not be a good thing. Maybe we need to add some systems in there and change that, your sales approach. So that's a big one for us. And again, another one of these things that we can track that is measurable at our meeting. And we cheerlead people who can get the referrals because it's so important from a business standpoint and just being able to help people out.
Exactly. I mean, you touched on it a little bit there, but that is ultimately the biggest compliment, but the biggest threshold for a company to assess the quality of service you're actually giving out, right? So I came from a salon background. We talked about that in the first episode. 12 years of being in the beauty industry, and the biggest thing is you don't really know what a customer's experience is like when you're working in the business side of things, right? Same as us. You're owner, you're also a realtor as well, but you're working with your own clients. I'm COO for Wilson Group. It's we don't really know the standard of service that everyone is giving, the 10 agents on our team. We know the systems we have in place. We know how excellent they are. When we really truly have a measuring tool, which is seeing referrals flow in, people cheerleading and shouting the agents' names from the rooftop, writing Google reviews and sending their friends and family, that's when you know the quality is there, right? This is exciting. That is a really thrilling way to see the quality of each one of our agents that work with us and the impact that they're having on their clients' lives. And for us, it's a great way for us to know who to promote. It's a great way for us to assess and understand, like, just where there might be any gaps and where we're doing something exceptionally well. And I think that that's again, we have that standard. We have a great referral system in place. Our process for referrals is awesome in terms of like immediately rewarding the person who gives us a referral because gratitude is important to us. We don't expect them, right? It's something that like we actually have to earn. So I think that ultimately it's a twofold situation, right? So from a business owner standpoint, it is a great way for you to really truly do a temperature check on how your employees or team members are actually servicing the clients. It's also a really solid temperature check of are we doing anything from an operational standpoint that we, should be doing better, right? Like, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? And how do we make this better and more efficient and a better experience for the client? So, we knew that when we put the referral one in place as a standard, we knew that that was like so much bigger than just getting more business. It was very telling and glaring of just where, we stand as a whole and as a team, right? And as
Yeah.
a reputation.
Yeah, that's so important because, obviously referrals are the lifeline of many sales businesses. Again, doesn't matter what type of business it is, but people talking highly of you and then getting business because of that. Super, super important. So another thing we do, and this is very granular for our specific business, but I think it all ties back to value. And we are required to not making sure we're following up with people in a certain time frame and making sure we don't have too many overdue things. And that goes back to value because if you're a couple months behind on getting in touch with, a past client, let's say, that you could add value to, maybe they missed an opportunity to refinance, and we don't want something like that to happen. So we have pretty rigid requirements as far as, all right, you need to add value, a handful of times a year to these people, not just something generic, because it could be something for their specific town. It could be something for their specific, you know, situation or business or interest rate, whatever the case may be. But we want to make sure that nothing is, going too long and nothing gets lapsed essentially.
Yeah. So to kind of like add a little bit more to that, the sixth standard that our company has is our agents cannot have a certain number of overdue tasks. This is something that's in our CRM and it is a reminder to reach out to people that really matter, right? And we know nowadays it's like you have Instagram, you have Facebook, LinkedIn, you have everything at your fingertips. Text messages, you could see someone out in person in the real world, in the wild, right? So there's so many ways that you could be connecting with people, but the system is set up to make sure that no one slips through the cracks, right? We would just never want to have that happen. When you work really hard to build relationships, you want to be reminded of, hey, every day when you wake up, even if you're having a really tough day, reach out to these 5 people, reach out to these 10 people, whoever it might be. And our company standard is you just can't let that get too far beyond a certain point, right? Because your job every day is to connect with people and is to add value to people. So that is one of the most important things for our team. And that's why it's one of our 7 standards.
Right.
So again, we have so many systems in place. And I think the biggest one that I mentioned is using our CRM to tell us, hey, this is what you have to do today, right? And that's probably one of the best suggestions I could ever give to someone too is don't force yourself day in and day out to have to come up with who to call, who to reach out to. Set a system that is just going to tell you, like, hey, here's the cadence. You haven't talked to this person in a while. Here's a reminder. Reach out, see how they're doing, add value, check the rates, see what's going on in their local market, and have a conversation with them.
Hmm.
It's that simple.
Yeah, you're right. In our seventh, non-negotiable standard is very, very specific for our business because what we do is take seriously representing buyers and sellers. And if we are giving the honor of representing a seller and selling their house, we want to make sure that everything is absolutely taken care of. And we specifically tie this to open houses. Our company is huge doing open houses. The way we look at it is it's a numbers game. The more people we can get through your door, the better chance that we have of selling your house for the highest amount of money. And this seventh standard is tied around with whatever agent is holding that open house. You are required to follow up with every single person that walked through that door within a day, within 24 hours. Usually it's within a couple hours, but absolutely following up with them because there's a lot of opportunity there to sell the house. Number one goal, sell the house. And if you can relieve some uncertainty from that buyer that came through your open house because you call them immediately thereafter, answer questions, maybe they think they don't have a chance of getting the house. But, next thing you know, you have a conversation with them and maybe they are in the price point that would be advantageous for your seller. Or maybe they have terms that might help your seller because they might be willing to allow your seller to stay and rent back for a few months. There's certain things that you find out from these phone calls. So it's required to absolutely follow up because, again, everything's tied back to the customer experience. And if we can raise our level and give the best possible customer service to our clients, we're going to end up netting them the most amount of money in their sale. We're going to end up getting them the best possible deal on their purchase, whatever it may be. All these standards relate back to that in adding value and adding, a ton of education to our clients to make sure we're helping them out the best possible way we can. So, seventh standard for us is you got to follow up with these people at open houses.
Absolutely. And it's within a timely manner, right? Which is what you said. The system behind that, because this one it's an easy one. I love this one. It's, someone scans in at our open house with a QR code. They go directly into our database. The person who's hosting the open house needs to immediately follow up. We usually say a phone call or a text and an email. What you're doing though is you're following back up. You're giving the link to that house that we're listing, right? Reminding them how much they might have loved that home, sending them all of the additional data and info, asking if they have questions, seeing what they need from us to be able to potentially submit an offer on that home if that is going to be the case for them. And the reason why this is such an important system and such an important standard is because ultimately, whether you meet someone at an open house who's going to buy that home or not, Wilson Group is on the sign outside, right? We are on that listing sign. Our name is all over everything. The client that's selling that home trusted us enough to hire us to sell their home. We are representing the seller, and we need to come across as professional and as helpful and knowledgeable as possible, right? That's why we have our open house packets with all of the information that they need. We are so well versed on the home that we're selling. We go above and beyond with it. And I think that that's just another layer of customer service, whether those buyers are our customers or not. Ultimately, we're still showing and providing that, like, we give white glove customer service through and through because that's what we owe it to our seller for, right? This is the biggest asset that they're selling. And we need to ultimately make sure that we're putting our best foot forward with every person that walks through that door,
Yeah.
showing that level of professionalism. So I think,
Yeah, these systems that we're talking about and standards, these really are standards in action. Frankly, they're things that you can absolutely execute on, And what we typically do is we'll look at what these standards are and then build our goals around them to hit the standards. And again, they're baseline, but they really give you a roadmap, to be successful, to make sure you're doing what you need to do to be successful in your career. And from a full client breadth transaction, we look at this in three phases. So we look at it as the onboarding phase, okay, where you need to put systems in place from an onboarding standpoint, not just during the transaction. Second phase might be during the transaction, systems in place to help you there, and then in offboarding. So if you look at it, just like you mentioned the coffee shop, you need to have a system in place before they even walk through the door. You need a system in place when they're there, and then you need a system in place for after they go there. So find it super helpful to look at it that way as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, obviously we're talking systems and standards. So ultimately it's your standards are going to be what you're going to be able to decipher who's a good fit for your team, right? The standards are telling your team members what the expectation is. It's the base level expectation. The goal is to actually always reach that expectation, hopefully exceed that expectation. And then you have the systems that help support your team to achieve those standards. And then what you were, kind of just mentioning as well is, we talked so much about customer service and how, we mentioned at one point, like any sales industry, it's like any customer facing
Right.
industry should have all of these things in place, right? Anyone who's client facing, you need this because ultimately you're human to human and you need to make sure that each interaction is at the same high level that as the one before,
Right.
right? And that's also how you get repeat business. That's how you get that retention, right? Is to be able to continue to replicate that same high level of service over and over and over again. So that's where, like you said, that onboarding for the client process, that during the transaction phase, and then that offboarding process all comes into play. And that's where, we could talk a whole entire episode about those kinds of systems because there's so much that goes into that. But I do think that if you sit here and you're listening to this episode, because this is tough to listen to systems all day long, right? We get it. It can be boring. But if you don't have those things written out, then you need to find an AI tool or find an employee that works with you who's amazing at transcribing information. And you need to just put this stuff in writing. How do you want to onboard your clients? How do you want to treat them throughout the transaction? What are some special opportunities to surprise and delight? Where are some gaps in communication where you could be adding something that's going to help achieve, a more seamless transaction? And then when you offboard them, is it clear? Are the expectations clear of what's going to happen next with your relationship at that point, right? Because no matter what business you're in, if you are a client facing business, you usually don't want that to be the end of
Right.
your relationship with that client. You usually are looking for some sort of continued contact together, right? So it's, whether it's a salon industry where it's like, hey, I'm looking for you to rebook another appointment. I'd love to see you again, right? Or our industry where people aren't usually buying houses every couple of weeks or every year. But ultimately, it's like, hey, listen, what I want to do, no matter what, is at least help you maintain the value of your home and help you with, everything from home maintenance to estate attorneys to even just like cool places to go within your neighborhood, right? You're just continuing to add value, continuing to deepen that relationship. And that's where that offboarding piece really comes into play. You need to write out that system.
Right.
What is it that you want to do? And what is it that's going to make it the standard and level of service that you are going to be proud of?
Right, right. And if you're a business owner or frankly a solo entrepreneur and you feel like you're in the weeds, when you're in the weeds, when you're in that moment, write down one thing that you might be able to do, one process. Because again, it takes time. Write down one process that might help you get through that situation. And maybe it's, you audit one transaction or one client or whatever your business is, audit one of those and start writing down, all right, this is something I can implement. This is something I can implement. And maybe you do that next time, or maybe you put two of them into place. And if you are a business owner, by doing that and trying to put some systems in that are going to get you out of the weeds, that's going to give you the opportunity and time to do other things. Maybe that's develop people. Maybe that's coach your team. Maybe that's take some continuing ed. Maybe that's just take some free time and just have your business run a little bit more efficiently. Whatever that may be, systems in any line of work are going to help. But you just got to break it down and keep them super, super simple. We went over 7 standards that we have in systems around those standards. and we try to keep them very, very simple, but they have to be measurable and you have to track them. We look at them every week at least, and you're required to look at them every week. Some people have the spreadsheet up every day looking at their quarterly goals and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's got to be clear. And you got to be able to, recreate it over and over again to minimize mistakes.
Exactly. So the systems that we have, the 7 standards that we have, those are giving clarity to our team, which clarity is kindness, right? So it's giving clarity to our team, and from there it's also allowing us to hire effectively and be able to actually tap into, are these the standards that you're willing to hold yourself accountable to if you were to join our team, which has been a very big benefit for us. And it's also, we can coach to the standards, which is really helpful. We can create goals surrounding those standards. There's so much that you can do once you actually iron out, like, what are my company's standards? What are the most important things for us? We picked 7 things that had nothing to do with sales, nothing to do with sales volume. It had everything to do with giving an extreme level, an extremely high level of customer service to our clients. And if you do those 7 things, you will see the result, right?
Right.
You will see that in your numbers, which is ultimately your goal. But we picked those on purpose. We picked those on purpose because whatever season someone is at in their life, or whatever stage they're at in their career, ultimately, if you did those 7 standards, we actually really truly know you will see growth and you will absolutely thrive and flourish. So we hope that this is helpful for any business owner out there to be able to say, okay, like, this isn't that daunting to create some standards. And then the systems that go with it, it truly is how you're operating, writing them down, where you see gaps. And once you kind of iron that out, my suggestion is to, because I'm not saying like you're going to sit there with a piece of paper and check your systems every single day as you're operating and moving really fast. But I always just say, once a month, pull out those systems that you have written and just do a quick audit of, like, okay, am I actually really doing all these steps? Because you'd be surprised the small little ones that slip through the cracks, and those can be those big ones that compound,
Hmm.
right? So that would just be my only one suggestion as a takeaway from this episode is, once you write everything out, you then do have to actually reread
Right.
it
Yeah.
because you will tweak it. You will tweak things. That we're constantly tweaking our systems and, finding areas where we can improve and create stronger, more efficient
Right. I
processes.
love that. And one thing that I would say for one big takeaway is it doesn't need to be the perfect playbook. It doesn't need to be the perfect all. If you're new to this or you're a business owner for many years that it's daunting because you haven't, created systems yet you've had a successful company, well, that's great. You're that much further ahead. Clearly, you're a talented person. You add some systems in there and you're going to be that much more efficient. You're going to get some freedom. You're going to get some time back. And if you want to grow and build your business, you're going to have the ability to do so and scale. But what that does is by implementing those, few things and not relying on it to be that perfect playbook, it starts to build momentum. And if you can add one, maybe it's one a month, maybe it's one a week, whatever, your appetite is, add that and you'll start to build momentum and you'll see your business start to grow, and your life start to be a little bit better.
I love that. So it's for scalability. It's for a little bit more work-life balance back in your day. But then also one other piece, and this is for anyone who's thinking about the bigger, grander plan, is if you create these systems and you actually really do iron them out and make them, kind of part of your playbook that grows you and scales your business, that's what you have to sell to down the
Hmm.
road, right? So if that's your ultimate plan, I mean, I think someday we all would like to retire at some point in life. I mean, I don't know, who knows?
Right.
I do want to work until I die, but we'll see. But it's also, there is a lot of benefit and value to having a business, not just being an owner operator,
Yep.
but actually running a business, being a business owner who runs a really smart and strategic business. And
Yeah.
that comes from these types of things.
Yeah. So, I
So,
mean, you said it. If you want to be a business owner that runs a really successful business, systems are a non-negotiable. Frankly, it's why franchises exist, right? In
mhm.
every industry. Obviously, I'm thinking of the restaurant industry and so on, but like that's why they exist, because their systems work and people are willing to pay for them. So, this has been wonderful to chat systems. Me and you could talk systems all day long. But any last parting ways?
I would just say, if you want to actually be able to give clarity to your team, allow for your team to feel like they know what they're supposed to do, what the expectations are of them. You need to put standards in place. It's the number one thing you can do as a leader. It's the number one thing you can do for yourself as a business owner. Create those standards and then put processes in place around tracking those standards and making sure that you actually live and breathe by them.
I love it. Live and breathe by them.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is the Real Estate for Real Life podcast. I'm Ryan Wilson.
And I'm Courtney Gauchman.
Thanks for listening.